Secretary Duncan.
4 points, and this has been, excuse me, just a really thoughtful conversation. 4 quick points I'd like to make. There's a question about year-round schools, and I do think that we need to be doing more to educate our children. I think we have to get dramatically better. I think what we're doing is insufficient for our students to be competitive and to get good jobs. And part of what we need is longer school days, longer school weeks, longer school years. I actually think we need to fundamentally change our idea of what a school is. I think every school needs to be what I call a community school, a community center that's open 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, 11, 12 months out of the year. And those non-school hours, I think, are hugely important. After school, weekends, over the summer, extended learning time, academic enrichment, helping students catch up, but also drama and arts and sports and music and activities for families. And when schools truly become the centers of the neighborhood, centers of the community, social service partnerships there, nonprofit partnerships, healthcare clinics attached to schools, and Secretary Sebelius and I have talked about that. When schools truly become the hearts of the community, servicing not just children, but adults, parents, and grandparents as well, I think great things happen for children. I also think we know the devastating consequences of what we call summer reading loss, and we don't need another study about that. We have lots of children who teachers work extraordinarily hard. They get to a certain point in June, and they come back in September, and they're further behind when they left. That is heartbreaking, that's unacceptable, and we just need to do more to work with our children. So we are looking at ways to continue to expand time and to really make our schools the hearts and the centers of the community. Secondly is Secretary Sebelius has the extraordinarily difficult job of passing health care reform. Once that's done, and that will get done, we want to think about reauthorizing No Child Left Behind. And we have a huge opportunity to build upon what did work. I think what did work is the disaggregating of data and looking at the horrendous achievement gaps between students, and we don't want to lose that focus, and we want to continue to have those courageous conversations, but many things didn't work. What we want to really focus on as we move towards reauthorization is thinking about how you get great adults into our children's lives. Great teachers, great principals make an extraordinary difference. Talent matters tremendously. And how do we systemically get the best and brightest teachers and principals into the communities that have been historically underserved? And many of your communities have been horrendously underserved for decades. And how do we reverse the talent? We talk so much in this country about the achievement gap. The achievement gap is real, it is stubbornly large. I'm frankly more focused on what I call the opportunity gap. And I'm convinced if our children had the chance to be educated, our children from historically disadvantaged, underserved communities had the chance to be educated by the best teachers, by the best principals over the long haul, that achievement gap would disappear. And so that's really going to be the focus as we move forward. How do we recruit, retain, support great teachers and great principals, and how do we get them into the communities that need them the most? Finally, one of the other big challenges historically was a dramatic underfunding of education under No Child Left Behind and going back. And what this administration has done with the President's leadership and the bipartisan support of Congress is extraordinary. There's been $100 billion in new money for education, early childhood, K-12, and higher ed. And while it's never enough, our budget basically doubled. That never happens. In the public sector, in the private sector, in the philanthropic community, your budget never doubles, where ours literally did. And so it's a huge opportunity to invest differently, not in the status quo, in ways where we need to improve. What I've heard here today, what we heard in our visits, Greg in North Dakota and South Dakota, is that money getting to your communities? And in many places, the money's slow and it's inadequate. And so we have to do a much better job of monitoring as those resources move out to states, move out to districts, that's getting where it needs to go. And we have to watch that very closely. The final point I'll go back to, and it's been a theme I think we've said and you've said, is that we as adults just have to behave in very different ways. That when children struggle, when our dropout rates are too high, when we have drug and alcohol abuse, I really don't blame our children. I think we as adults have not reached them. We're not giving them the support and the love and the guidance and the opportunities they need to be successful. If we meet them halfway, I think our students are more than rise to the challenge. The conversation we had a community meeting like this at Lame Deer High School when I was there, and we had adults and students in a room, and adults were having a pretty good conversation, and a young girl, 14, 15-year-old girl, freshman in high school, just stopped the conversation. She said, "You guys have been having this wonderful dialogue, and I'm just sitting here looking at the ceiling the whole time. We're in the school library." and we all looked up. I hadn't noticed the ceiling. We all looked up, and there was this huge water stain where water had been leaking in. She said, if you guys really cared, you would have fixed that water stain a long time ago. And so our children are going to listen to what we say, but they're going to watch much more closely what we do. And we have to walk the walk together. I absolutely want you and ask you to hold us accountable for stepping up and delivering, and we got to partner together to do the right thing by children.
Secretary Solis.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate the importance of our programs that we offer at the Department of Labor, especially for the youth and for those dislocated workers. We have, again, high numbers of unemployment across the country, and we know that there has to be an effort made to fund these programs sufficiently. When I came to the Department of Labor in February of this year, I found that structurally the programs that are dealing with our Native American communities and tribes had not been sufficiently funded in the last decade. So one of the efforts that we would like to make and put forward with your help and consultation is to expand that, but to coordinate better with our other agencies so that we are in collaboration, so that I can draw upon some of the other divisions in the Department of Labor to help us. And I have an initiative to make sure that we provide assistance to our Native American veterans to see that they get assistance for training, job opportunities, and the right to return to a job, those especially veterans that are coming home that are serving right now in Iraq and Afghanistan. They need help. They also need to have assistance once they hit the ground and come home, so that if they have any disabilities, that we provide them with that identified support in a setting that you can look at in terms of a community center that welcomes them, that gives them information for job training, helps them apply for a job, but walks them through the process and sends them to referral agencies that come from the community. That's where the best work that I have seen comes from, when it's done in communities where people can trust each other. I was very pleased to be able this year to go to Pueblo, New Mexico, and go visit some of the tribal leaders and governors. But I was more struck by visiting one of our Job Corps centers, where there were students living in this residential program. Most of these students would be qualified as losers by society, and most of them have been failed by our education system. But when I met with them, they came with the essence that they wanted to change their lives, that they too knew that they had to escape some of the things that constrained their ability to be who they wanted to be. And I was very proud to see many of them entering into engineering, science, and health fields, and even welders. I mean, let me tell you something. I can't explain how important it is for us to provide all educational, whether it's vocational and higher tech training, to all our Native American tribes and our students. And the importance is backing it up with that kind of care, assistance, and monitoring that goes through that cycle. Because it isn't just you put them in school and then they go out and they're gonna be able to survive. We need to continually provide that continued support and make sure that we are working collaboratively with all of our agencies, whether it's HHS, whether it's Department of HUD, or whether it's education, and just bringing that all together. I think that's very, very important. I have hired someone in our public engagement office who is Native American, Ms. Willis. Some of you may know her. Yesterday, she led our discussion at the Department of Labor with our agencies and with our deputy assistant secretaries. We, again, want to just reiterate how we want to work with all of you to have these consultations and advisories throughout the country. Please contact us. I want to also just, in closing, say that I know the issue of sovereignty on the tribes is very important with respect to labor laws. Number one, I have to tell you, coming to the department, we had a very, very bad record in terms of protecting workers. People die in the construction industry, in the mining industry, in the poultry industry, in different service areas where we have a higher representation of Native Americans and minorities. We have to change that. And we have to be able to enforce our laws to make sure people know their rights, working with business too and with the tribal nations so that we all are on the same page. This president wants to see all of us be successful, and we can do it by working together. With respect to some of the labor laws, I know some of you are concerned about discussions regarding the Employee Free Choice Act. It may have come up, or NLRB, National Labor Relations Board. I know you're going to work with Congress. I know those discussions are going on, and I applaud you. And we have to work in that direction. There will be a solution, I hope, and that we can all agree on. But we do respect your sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Solis. And Congressman Dale Kildee.
I'll be very brief. I'm in real life a teacher, and I am going to work very hard, particularly on funding for Indian education from birth through graduate school. What we did do in HHS was we increased Head Start, rewrote Head Start. The last official act that Ted Kennedy and I did together was to rewrite Head Start. That's an extremely important program, and we put in a really significant set-aside for Indians, and that is going to be very important. Head Start's a great program. You deserve more. And one other program, Johnson O'Malley. I know we're on tight schedules, so I'll yield back to the Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Kildee. Let me just say that we are getting close here to wrapping up and hearing from the President of the United States and the White House leadership as we move forward. But I do want to say this. It is, for me, an honor to be a part of President Barack Obama's administration. You have heard from a stellar group of people, the Cabinet, and they have heard from you today. And thank you so much for participating in this. They are the best. Thank you very much. Now, we have a lot of work to do together, from the lack of jobs and the poverty across Indian country to a greater day of prosperity, from the major issues of health care, which are so poignant in Indian country, to the educational issues that Arnie so described. There is so much work that we have to do together, and we will do that together. If you will just stay where you are, we will be continuing the program in just a few minutes here. I appreciate you all being a part of this, and thank you for a stellar White House conference on tribal nations as we establish a nation-to-nation relationship. Thank you very much.
Up next on